Boom. We are live. Live after I don't know, you want to call it a dramatic opening night to week 1? I don't know if dramatic is the right word. Interesting.
Dramatic, I would
I don't know.
say. I mean, it was a close game.
It was a very close game.
It was not a snoozer.
No, it was not. Even though it hit the under and everything, but it was a very good game. Probably lots to talk about, and I'm sure we'll get to it from some of the questions or whatnot. But welcome in, everybody. This is, I guess we did one last week, but this is, I think the first like official AMA, because now we're in it. We're in week 1. We're actually doing some start sits. We have a game already behind us, so this is going to be really, really fun. So drop any questions down in the comments down below on YouTube, on either DLF or 4for4. We'll get to as many as we possibly can within the next hour or so here. And then if you are so inclined to drop a super chat down below, we will get to that question immediately. We appreciate the support. It's not required at all, but if you do want to show a little bit of love and support, and then we'll answer your question immediately from that. Super chats are also an option. And speaking of which, we already have one at the very top at the beginning. 10 minutes ago, Mike is asking, in a start 2 half PPR, would you do Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, or Miles Sanders? Start 2 of them this week.
Yeah, I pulled up my flex rankings just to make sure I was giving the proper advice, and it was a little interesting because I think your brain tells you after all this drafting that Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson hold more value than Miles Sanders, but now we get into it, and Miles Sanders is projected ahead of both of them, 17 touches compared to Wilson, who's next up, and then Olave, who is third. So, if you agree with that projection for Sanders, then I would go with Sanders and Wilson. And then, looking at that Wilson matchup with Buffalo, it's a tough one. I think, his situation is probably a little bit better than Chris Olave's, quarterback wise and everything. But Olave's matchup this week against Tennessee's significantly better. So I wouldn't be surprised if Olave scores more than Wilson. It's close. I understand with the question that you don't know who to start, and that's why you're asking it. But it does seem a little weird to bench your second round receiver in Olave. But if you're in this situation, the projections say Sanders and Wilson, and then we may have to revisit this flex question moving forward if Sanders doesn't get the sort of workload we're expecting. But we're expecting bell cow touches for him when he's healthy.
Yeah, I would start Wilson and Olave, but I'm not as deep into the redraft projections and rankings and weeds as you are. So I'd probably trust John on that one, especially with the projected workload that Sanders is supposed to get. But I just like Olave's matchup against Tennessee, and Garrett Wilson, I think, is going to be phenomenal.
It is a floor. It's a floor ceiling question too. So sure. Sanders running backs, it's a lot easier to get them the ball. So they have that floor. They're playing Atlanta, bad defense last year, but they did invest a lot on that side of the ball. So, it's just easier to get them 10 plus touches, easier to get them 15 plus touches, obviously, than the receivers. So that's the floor. And then the ceiling is, Olave hitting 2 bombs for touchdowns against Tennessee, which is a pretty bad defense. So.
Right. And they were tough to run against too. So, and without Alvin Kamara, probably without Kendry Miller as well, they're the success for them this week, the game plan wise, is probably going to be Olave, even some Michael Thomas in there. So I like Chris. I have him in a DraftKings lineup already going on Sunday. So I'm team Olave. We have another super chat from Jeff. So thank you for the support, Jeff. Thank you for the super chat as well, Mike. But Jeff is asking, assuming that Christian Watson is sitting this week, are you starting Jaden Reed or Zay Flowers? Which of the 2 rookie wide receivers are you going with? Jaden Reed, who now should have a bump up because Christian Watson's out, or are you going to trust the first rounder and Zay Flowers and what we hope is a better Baltimore offense?
And we're just assuming that Watson sits, right? I didn't miss any news this morning that he was ruled out or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. As of right now, today, we're just going to assume he's out.
I probably in this situation would go with Reed. Zay Flowers, I do have it at 43 this week. We don't really know what this Baltimore receiving rotation is going to look like. There is that Odell Beckham ankle injury as well. So I think if Beckham were to sit and Watson sits, then I think Zay Flowers would move ahead of, back ahead of Reed, with this question. Watson's injury just popped up out of nowhere, so I don't know how this happened or when it happened, but all of a sudden he's very, very questionable for this week. Jaden Reed looks great. I don't know that he's going to play starter snaps even if Watson sits. However, it looks like Dobbs is going to be back, and they have a Malik Heath who started in place of Dobbs in the last preseason game. Looked pretty good. So they might just keep Reed's snaps around 70-80% as the third slot receiver there. So I wouldn't expect him necessarily to play 90-95% of the snaps or anything like that.
Right. I'm also starting Jaden Reed. I mean, Romeo Dobbs also had a similar kind of injury to Watson. He practiced a little bit yesterday, so at least it looks like he's going to be able to play. But if he's at all hampered or anything flares up during the game, that could be even more opportunity for Jaden Reed. I would start Jaden Reed, assuming that Christian Watson is out, which also kind of touches on this question from Latin Victory. Are we starting Christian Watson? If he goes into the game and he plays, are you still willing to start Christian Watson then?
If it all depends on his Friday practice status. If he doesn't practice at all or is limited, I'd be probably moving him down from where I have him right now. I'm hoping the rankings kind of show that I'm hoping that he's a full go today, but that's probably being way too optimistic. Most likely, if he is going to play, he'll get a limited tag today. And they just might be being really careful, heading into week 1 with him, hoping not to re-aggravate the injury. Obviously you like your guys to be full practice on Friday before you start them. I lost a little confidence in week 1 if he does go. So he does have that game-breaking ability, though, and it's the Bears. So the matchup's not bad, and all it takes with him is one catch and run, and you got your fantasy day for the week.
Yeah, I'm probably not touching him. If you have another solid option, I think I'm sitting Christian Watson and just seeing what happens. Assuming that he is healthy. If he's out, then that made your decision really easy for you. John's in the chat. He says, we are. John's a Penn State fan, as am I. Looking forward to the Delaware matchup tomorrow. We're going to win by 70. Here for the meme says, what up, John? Ed says, let's get it on. Here for the meme says, praise be to the sun god. Amon-Ra delivering in week 1 already. Love to see it. So, all right, let's answer this one from Chris. Chris is a YouTube member, so be more like Chris. Yeah, you get a little bit more priority in the AMAs as well. So Chris is asking, should he overreact and trade Kadarius Toney for a number 2 pencil or any equivalent to that? But thoughts on him in general and what to do when someone comes out this flat. So I think you can kind of we can expand upon this and touch on Sky Moore. We can touch on basically the entire Chiefs wide receiver room because there was not a lot that happened. So how are you just feeling in general about Toney, Sky, everything going on KC?
I did tweet out Chiefs receiving report, Lions receiving report, and then RBBC reports for both teams. 444_John. If you want the full stats, Toney is like, I mean, it was a nightmare. Like the interception was a disaster. He's dropping passes after that. The plus side is, okay, he's coming off of this injury. He probably didn't practice much. He was pretty rusty heading into the game, or at least out of sync. And how many targets is he receiving on 11 routes? He had 5 targets on 11 routes. The guy earns targets when he's on the field. He has incredible yards per route run in his career. It was terrible. Obviously 0.09 last night. Not great. But I would expect him to be better moving forward. This is probably a good opportunity to go get him if you believe in him. But it was a disaster. So it's more of a I want to bench him. I want him on my roster still. I don't want to cut him. I want to bench him, but I want to see, the fundamentals are there. He's getting tons of targets on his routes. Mahomes is looking for him. Mahomes said after the game he believes in him. So it was bad, but for different reasons than why Sky Moore was bad.
Right. Yeah. I think the benefit with Tony though is that like we have to remember that he didn't have a training camp essentially. Like he missed all of training camp. So he's still, I mean, you could say that he had an entire offseason to get integrated into this offense, but he just joined this offense late last year, then doesn't have training camp. So he's still trying to find his way in here. But like you said, the signal's still there that he is, seeing a good number of targets per route run. Even though he's only running 11 total routes, that's still an issue that he's not getting on the field as much to, blow up those numbers in terms of targets per route run if he's running 30 routes like Sky Moore versus only 11, So I think that there is a different issue with Kadarius Toney. But I think that there is a little bit more upside and still things to believe in and hold on to for Tony versus Sky, which I'd imagine that you're kind of in the same mindset as I am with Sky, is that that was like the worst possible outcome for Sky Moore. Dude runs 30 routes, plays like 80% of snaps, has like 3 targets. His target share was no different than MVS or Rashee Rice, who's a rookie as well. And it's just, he's not separating himself from the other wide receivers in this group in a game where he should have been the guy to separate himself as the more experienced and more highly upside kind of guy. So I'm kind of fine just writing off Sky Moore until he tells me otherwise.
So I would just say that, Tony's issue is very much injury related, missing camp related. Like the 11 routes might be due to his conditioning or just integration in the offense. So, and then obviously the drops. So Sky Moore, on the other hand, ran 31 routes. So what I don't get here is that the team obviously sees something from Sky Moore in practice to give him this much run. So what is he doing there that he's not doing in games or in just this one game? I think it's a 1-game situation. He was also an 8th, 9th round pick. I wouldn't cut him yet, but he's definitely one I would bench to see what happens here. We're also, I think the worst case scenario would have been 15 routes with 2 targets and no catches as opposed to 31 routes. Cause there is that like the team likes him. So why do they like him? Maybe we'll see it. And then the other thing is that they're running like a 7-man rotation at receiver. So it's bad for everyone until 3 or 4 guys can really emerge and become consistent targets.
But then the problem then whenever Kelsey comes back is he's going to get 10 plus targets a game anyway. So it's going to further relegate all these other wide receivers to the back burner. And if none of them are able to separate themselves, it's just going to be horrible. So keep them on your bench. Don't cut them yet, but in a week or 2, if they're still not doing anything, then I'm cutting these guys. Here for the memes with a $10 super chat. We appreciate you here for the memes. Welcome back in. He's been a consistent, I was going to say follower, but follower is not the right word. A consistent viewer of this stream for the past few weeks, even before you and hopped on. So we love here for the memes, but he's saying happy week 1. Amon-Ra had a solid outing for me last night. Had a solid outing for probably everybody that started Amon-Ra last night. Starting off my 3-headed monster for my Dynasty 3 wide receiver league, still have Garrett and Tyreek to play. Who do you see having a better week 1 out of the 2 between Garrett Wilson and Tyreek Hill? Garrett Wilson obviously playing Buffalo. Tyreek has to go across the country to go play in LA against the Chargers. Both are pretty rough matchups, I would say, especially given Tua's history with the Chargers. But who do you see as having a better week between the 2, Garrett Wilson and Tyreek?
I have Tyreek at 2 and I have Wilson at 10. I think it's a matchup situation. I guess there's some history here with the Chargers and the Dolphins, but Tyreek figures to line up a lot with JC Jackson, who wasn't very good last year in coverage, and we'll probably see Tre'Davious White on Garrett Wilson quite a bit. So I think it's a over under total type situation and a matchup situation for these individual receivers.
I'll take Tyreek Hill, just the better player. More, I don't want to say he's more of the alpha, but I mean, he's Tyreek Hill. You got to give him the ball. And I expect the Dolphins to be throwing a lot this week, even if they might not be overly efficient at it. I expect him to be throwing a ton, and Tyreek should be the guy getting a large majority of those, as should Garrett Wilson. But I think it's great to have both those guys. And you had Amon-Ra go last night, who scored like 20 points. So you're looking fantastic, dude. You've definitely built out these dynasty teams very well, very, very well. And we appreciate the support. Thanks for being here. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Parker's asking Justin Jefferson and a 23 first or Kadarius Toney. He had a fantastic night, guys. Fantastic night. Take advantage of it. Put him on the trade block and see what you can get for him. John's asking a 12-team Superflex PPR. Tiered PPR looks like he gave Dulcich and Clayton Tune got Tank Bigsby and Juju Smith-Schuster. I love that personally. Would you rather have Dulcich or Tank Bigsby?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. If you want to. Yeah, go
I didn't know that was a rhetorical question. Yeah, I think probably. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on your need, but probably Bigsby.
It's an interesting because you got the point per carry going in there for Bigsby, but then you also got the two PPR tight end premium as well for Dulcich, who could have some opportunity with Judy out.
I think we have to kind of see how Dulcich's role shakes out before we can really answer it. But that's the question right now, is whether or not he's got more value than Bigsby.
Right. I think I'd take Bigsby over Dulcich, and I'm definitely taking Juju over Clayton Tune, even though Juju doesn't really give you much either. Jacob's got four flex options for this week. He's got 3 rookies in JSN, Jordan Addison, and Marvin Mims, or he's got tried and true Adam Thielen. Hesitant about the rookies this early, but he's leaning Jordan Addison of the 4. If you had to pick one of these guys, who you flexing this week?
So he's got 4 flex options. JSN's coming off the injury, so I would kind of mark him off. I think it's between Addison and Mims for me. Thielen, I don't have real high right now. I have him at 74, so that's not very high. Addison at 38 in half PPR, Mims at 48. I think there is a bit of a concern about Addison's playing time week 1. There is a chance that he's playing behind KJ Osborne. Tampa has been up and down as a pass defense, but they're 29th last year in adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers. Mims is also interesting with the matchup against Vegas. I think his playing time floor is higher. I guess it depends though on Jerry Jeudy, because Jerry Jeudy has been practicing. So I guess you have the same situation with Mims. If Jeudy plays with Sutton, then Mims is likely the wide receiver 3, Addison likely the wide receiver 3. In that case, I'd go with Addison.
I think I've been worried about Addison for week 1 because I don't know if Minnesota needs him this week to beat Tampa. I just think that could just be so easily a more run heavy game, just because they get up really quickly. JJ has a touchdown to start the game off, and Madison finds the end zone. Then they just close out the game and run out the clock. So plus the aspect of first game, KJ Osborne, all that kind of stuff. I'm playing Mims of these 4, especially if Judy's out. If Judy does play because he's been practicing, I would still play Mims, but I am less excited about it. That's how I see it. Let's see here. We got Francis. Drop 2.5 PPR redraft. So we got to drop 2 of these guys. Samaje, Jerome Ford, Tyjae Spears, Sean Tucker, Jaden Reed, Nico Collins. I'm assuming maybe he needs a kicker and a defense before this week. He dropped those guys and then picked up these guys for see what would happen. So we got to drop 2 of them before Sunday.
Okay, I'll go with the easy one, and maybe you could pick the other one. Jerome Ford, I think, is the easy one with Pierre Strong coming over. Kind of dings his value as a for sure attrition type play for Nick Chubb. After that, Perrine is going to have weekly value. I think Jaden Reed, Nico Collins, I like both players. So it's kind of between Tyjae Spears and Sean Tucker. Looks like Tucker is both players are RB2s for their respective teams. So what do you think, Addison?
Those were the 2 names that I also identified as well. I don't know if you want, I feel like Tyjae Spears is more strictly a handcuff. I think he has the ability to cut into Henry's workload, but it's Derrick Henry.
Right.
Sean Tucker, I feel like, has more upside because that backfield has a little bit more unknown, and maybe he has the ability to ascend and get more touches with Rachaad White than Tyjae has with Derrick Henry. But I think that Tyjae has a more solidified role and watch this be the week that Derrick Henry gets hurt and you just drop Tyjae Spears, and now he's the most, sought after player after this week. So I'd probably drop Sean Tucker just to keep Tyjae, because I don't think if Rachaad White got hurt this week, I don't think people are rushing to the waiver wire for Sean Tucker as much as they would be rushing for Tyjae. I think there's also an argument, though, for Nico Collins, just because he's I feel like you could just find Nico Collins on the waiver wire in 10 different guys. So I feel like there's also kind of an argument there, but I think the running backs are a little bit easier to cut just because they don't have much of a weekly upside and value for you until somebody gets hurt.
I would have a tough time cutting Nico. I had like a 10th, 9th, 10th round grade on him. And as I think he's the number one receiver for Houston. CJ Stroud has, there's offensive line issues there, but CJ Stroud's really good, accurate passer, deep downfield as well. So that plays into Collins' hand. I wouldn't cut him, but it also depends on your running back wide receiver situation. If you're stacked at one of these positions, that makes it easier to decide, which position to cut.
That too. Jerome Ford's one. I think we'll say Sean Tucker's the other. But it's tough. I'd like to roster as many of these guys as I can, but Ford and Tucker. All right, final answer. Ed, full PPR. Who do I not start between Jacobs, Akers, Stevenson, Bijan, and Charbonnet? So you got to start 3 of those 5 guys. So I'm not starting Charbonnet. And
right.
Stevenson's not practicing today. I literally just got that notification before we went live that Stevenson's not practicing today, and I didn't see a reason why. I don't know if anybody knows why as of right now, but that is something.
Yeah, I would bench Charbonnet for sure, and then Akers if Stevenson's going to play. But Akers is a fine start if Stevenson sits. Jacobs and Bijan, I think you have to play.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jacobs and Bijan are auto locks. Are you worried at all about Stevenson's matchup against Akers without Cooper Kupp? He could see more of a receiving workload. He already had a workhorse volume last year at the end of the year.
I mean, yeah, it's a pretty good matchup against Seattle, but Seattle is, they have nobody to worry about in the passing game. They know they're going to try to feed Akers. It plays both ways. It's better for Akers if Kupp's on the field, I think, overall. Stevenson's matchup against Philly is not terrible. Philly was 14th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs last year. I think he's a low-end RB1, anytime he plays. So
I'm in. You already convinced me on Stevenson. I was drafting Stevenson to be that guy anyway, so I'm all for it. As long as he's playing, I'm in.
I mean, I think the health is now a question mark, so keep an eye on that. If it's dicey, then you might want to just plug Akers in, because Akers will get 15 plus touches in that game against Seattle.
Right, for sure. Jeff hit us with a $10 super chat after the $2 super chat that he already sent our way earlier today. So Jeff, thank you so much for the support. So let's see what he got. He says, Devon A-Chain was dropped. Are you okay dropping McKinnon to try to get him? What percentage of fab are you bidding for a high value bench stash? I just want to clarify this. Is this redraft or dynasty? Because I feel like this could go one of two ways, but I feel like it's more redraft. But I just want to clarify that so to make sure I'm giving you the best possible answer.
Do you want to field this one first?
So my other question to this is, are you able to drop McKinnon right now? You're in a league that allows you to drop him, or
maybe he's thinking
next week thing.
Yeah, next week's waivers.
Yeah.
I'll just point out that McKinnon ran 18 routes. Isaiah Pacheco ran 21. That was a little bit unusual. McKinnon wasn't able. He had 2 targets in a game where they didn't have Travis Kelce. So, I mean, McKinnon was on fire at the end of last year, but that did not carry over. And it does seem like they are more willing to feed Pacheco, not only as a runner, but as a receiver. He had 4 targets and did well, 1.63 yards per route run. for Pacheco.
Yeah.
So I think McKinnon coming out of week one of the takeaways is that his role is not necessarily there.
Yeah. So you did clarify it is redraft. So I'm definitely dropping Jarrett McKinnon for Devon Achane. I just think there's way more upside. And then you just touched on the fact that McKinnon's role might not necessarily be there if they're favoring Isaiah Pacheco a little bit more than what they were at the end of last year in the receiving game. So I'm dropping McKinnon for Achane. Now the percentage, I'm terrible at fab percentages, and especially in redraft because I have such a dynasty mindset and I just spend it all and then I don't have anything. Would you drop like 20 to 25%? Is that how high you're going for Achane? More?
It totally depends on what happens this week with Achane. He's been dinged up. He had the shoulder injury. It looks like he's going to play. If he does nothing, then I'd probably be less aggressive and try to conserve some of that fab. If he has a big game, then you're doing, you're paying whatever you.
So he said that he could drop him now. He's in a league where he's able to drop him, even though he's already played.
Oh, because
so
he was on the bench
right now. Yeah.
Well, then it's free. Well, no, he's got fab. So he's talking about.
Yeah, probably won't go.
They must do multiple.
Yeah, probably won't go until Sunday morning, maybe.
Since Achane's on the waiver wire, I don't know that he must have been dropped. Okay, so there's 10 other owners likely that are possibly interested. I don't know, 15%. But how badly do you want him?
Yeah, if you want him really bad, I'd go into the 20s. I think low 20s. You don't got to spend anything up closer to 30. I think 15% is a good starter, and then if you kind of get concerned about it, add $5 more.
I think he's on the right track though, because he's already evaluated McKinnon and seeing that Achane's a better pick,
right?
Better player, better stash.
Yep. Hopefully that helped, Jeff. If it didn't, let me know.
15 to 25.
Yeah, I think I would split the difference and just do 20. 21%.
21.
When somebody else goes 20, then you.
Well, you might want to do 22 because somebody else might do 21.
Oh, then you got to do 23 because somebody else is going to do 22 because they know somebody else. Yep. We just told him 25%. Basically, is what we just said. 20 to 25. That's my final answer. Let me scroll. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, and please let me know if we didn't answer your question as well as you were hoping for. Anyone else pleasantly surprised by how Monty looked last night?
I just speaking for myself, I had him ranked higher than ADP all year or all offseason. I had running back 22, running back 21. He was bouncing in that 20 to 22 range based on what else was going on at the running back position. But I thought he was going to take over that Jamal Williams role. And he did. I thought Jahmyr Gibbs looked good, though. He was a slip away from having a touchdown and having a fine first game. 60 total yards in your first game is not bad at all. So, this backfield looks like
like 9 touches too?
Yeah. And he broke like 7 tackles too. So, he might get some more run from that. But
he better.
Monty, look, big workload for him. It was 21
attempts, I think. Yeah.
And he ran 20 routes but didn't get targeted. So there's some upside there in the passing game if he keeps running ththose routes.
Yeah, he was on the field for a decent amount of third downs that I was not happy about as a Gibbs manager, but it's first game for Gibbs and they're going to work him in and stuff like that. So can't expect too much early on.
I think Monty was classic boring value in the middle rounds. And, I was high on Jahmyr Gibbs, still am, but this backfield, there's so many points available in this offense and this offensive line. So,
right.
They were both values. It's a rare time when both running backs in a backfield are both values at their ADP. Usually it's one or the other.
Well, when everybody hates DeAndre Swift and then you just insert a better DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
But nobody knew that DeAndre Swift was a top 15 running back in points per game in like 3 years in a row. Nobody cares. And then everybody saw that Monty was taking Jamal Williams, but he's not scoring 17 touchdowns. So He's
well,
terrible.
he can be fine if he gets 12.
There you go. He's on pace for 17 already. So
Yeah.
Would you flex? Speaking of DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, would you flex Swift, Jamal Williams, OBJ, Bateman, or Mims? I think we can throw the last three out. I think this is basically between Swift and Jamal Williams. Correct me if I'm wrong, though.
Yeah, and I would. I'm double checking, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be Jamal Williams, given the situation in both backfields.
I agree.
Yeah. We just don't know what Philly's going to roll out there. The matchup's fairly bad against the Patriots. And then on the flip side, you have Jamal Williams, who it's not a great matchup against Tennessee, but he's likely to go 20 touches. Kendry Miller's got a hamstring injury. Kamara is suspended. So it should be the Jamal Williams show. If there's a rushing touchdown, it might go to Taysom Hill. That's possible. But Jamal Williams, are they pulling Williams to run Taysom Hill out there at running back around the goal line? I don't know. He showed he could score touchdowns last year. So no, I just think 20 touches is too high of a floor to mess around with this week.
Yep, I agree. I'm playing Jamal Williams. Swift might look really good, but I think he's going to have limited touches. Basically, let's see. We just saw what Jahmyr Gibbs last night. I could see Swift doing the exact same thing. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, I feel like Jamal Williams' usage and workload should just surpass a non-touchdown game from Swift. Nick's asking which tight end to stream this week: Schultz, Everett, Juwan, Ferguson, or Luke Musgrave. Wow.
Yeah, these are fun. These tight end twos. I'm high on Ferguson. I've got him at 12. I have Musgrave right now. This is PPR. I have Musgrave at 10, given the injury
to Watson.
Question marks with Christian Watson. So if Christian Watson does play, then he might move down. And then I would say Ferguson. I think Everett's a solid play. I think Juwan Johnson's a solid play. Dalton Schultz is decent against Baltimore. But I think Ferguson against the Giants, they were 26th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends last year. I think he's the most likely to stay where he's at. Musgrave might move around some because of these injuries to the Packer receiving corps, but he looked great in the preseason and is an every down player for them. But so is Ferguson, I think.
Yeah. Ferguson was a name that stuck out to me pretty immediately, and the matchup's great. Giants have been terrible against tight ends for the past 17 years. So I'd play Ferguson. Musgrave was my number 2. Agree with you there. Daniel, half PPR, Lockett versus the Rams, or Deontay versus San Fran, or Drake London versus Carolina.
Oh my God. You have to bench
2 of them.
Deontay or Lockett? That's painful. I have Lockett the highest. And let's see, half PPR. I have Lockett pretty high. I have him at 12. I got Deontay at 26 and half PPR. He'd be higher in PPR. London, I have at 24. So I would go Lockett. But, I mean, there is the argument that Seattle's not going to have to throw a whole lot against the Rams this week.
Right.
And he could, sometimes these games, you end up with DK with a touchdown and then, Noah Fant, and then they just run the ball and Lockett's got, 2 catches for 22 yards or something. But this is also a game where he could be the one scoring the touchdowns early. I think with JSN kind of banged up, I would go with Lockett.
I think you have to go with Lockett. I agree with you. If I would take Deontay in a PPR, but the fact that it's a half PPR kind of drops his value a little bit. London, I'm not really trusting all that much with Kyle Pitts back. Add in Bijan Robinson. Carolina's wasn't a very good defense last year against running backs. So it could be just an easy running back. It could be a Bijan Algier game for Atlanta. I think you have to start Tyler Lockett, but I want to play Deontay. But I think you got to start Lockett.
Yeah, and thinking about the Seahawks defense, I don't think they're that good that they're just going to shut out the Rams. So Stafford might be able to put up some points to keep the game competitive through the first half, and then they still have to throw. Seattle's defense is not great.
Tyler Lockett, final answer. James Cook or Raheem Mostert, half PPR.
James Cook or Raheem Mostert.
I'll do James Cook.
In half PPR, or that's PPR. Gotta get half PPR up. I just FYI, I'm just double checking my rankings. I have my gut, but I don't want to. I got to think about why I ranked people where I ranked them. Mostert I have at 24. James Cook I have at 27. I think it's probably a matchup issue. Last year the Chargers were 25th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs. It was last year. We can't really trust these numbers implicitly, but I don't know that the Chargers did a whole lot to bolster their run defense. The Jets defensive line's tough. They were 13th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs last year, but they should be even better this year. So I would lean Mostert just because he's not going to be taken off the field around the goal line, whereas Cook will be. But you said your initial reaction was Cook.
I'm taking James Cook. Yeah.
Yeah, there you have it.
Well, I really like Mostert against the Chargers as well, too. I'm just concerned about Miami's offense just in general, traveling east to west. I think the Chargers defense is going to be pretty solid. Mostert, I think, will have good volume, but I trusted what I saw in James Cook in the preseason. And even though, he'll probably be taken off around the goal line like he was in the preseason, he still got massive amount of snaps and opportunities between the 20s. And if he gets one screen pass on like the 15-yard line before they give it to Damian Harris, he could end up falling into the end zone before they even get to the goal line.
Cook will score some touchdowns from outside the 10.
Right.
So it's not like he's not going to score touchdowns.
And I also think that if the Jets defense is doing a good job on Diggs and Gabe Davis, and Josh Allen might have to rely a little bit more on James Cook down in the short to intermediate, which is why I also like Kincaid this week too. But that's a narrative. I don't know if that's like, there's nothing really based on that other than just like Sauce Gardner. But I watched Trey Palmer torch Sauce Gardner, so maybe there's something else there. Anyway, Jack's asking, he needs a strong flex here. Not sure to start. Zay Flowers, Brandon Cooks, George Pickens, or Jordan Addison.
It would be helpful to know the scoring systems for these, just so that we're giving you the best advice. I'll just assume half PPR. Adios mio.
I don't know if I want to start any of these guys.
I think Pickens is decent. I have him at 34 and half PPR. I've got, let's see I said PPR. Okay. So I'm fairly optimistic about this Steelers offense in general. I don't know how great they're going to do against the 49ers, but maybe Joey Bosa is not completely back. Cooks at 35, Addison at 36, Pickens at 37, so it's tight. Zay Flowers at 42. Just the rankings say Brandon Cooks against the Giants, but that's just betting on the veteran. It's all those first three, Cooks, Addison, and Pickens, are all within 0.2 in the projections. I would say Addison and Pickens have better matchups. The 49ers were not great against receivers last year. They have a good defense, but they were 27th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So that's a tough one.
I think Pickens certainly has the most upside for sure, just inherently based on how he is as a player, and his usage in the offense, and the fact that he is not a rookie like two of these guys are, and not a player in a new offense like Brandon Cooks is. So I feel like if you just kind of want to play the safest, but also go for the most upside, that's George Pickens, I think.
That's reasonable because we aren't 100% sure what Brandon Cook's role, how much he's going to play with Gallup there and everything. So that's pretty good advice, I think.
Nice. Also, speaking of Pickens, do you prefer him or Elijah Moore? Since we chose Pickens over Addison, would you choose Pickens or Elijah Moore?
Pickens for sure. I don't know what's going to happen with this Cleveland offense. So, as regular readers know, I'm not in on Deshaun Watson right now. That might change. But based on what we saw last year, I think his QB9 ranking was egregious. Consensus ADP was pretty egregious. I realize he's got a ton of upside, but Elijah Moore is also dealing with Donovan Peoples-Jones, and everybody's writing him off. But he's a young receiver, had over 800 yards last year. He actually was one of the few receivers that actually clicked with Deshaun Watson last year. So I don't know that Moore comes in and is like the number 2 option automatically. I know they're trying to feed him the ball and trying to get him the ball in camp and different ways, but that just sounds to me like he might have a tough time earning targets in normal offense. So I would, I would lean Pickens, especially half PPR. I think that plays into Pickens' hands even more so than maybe Jordan Addison.
The last piece of this is assuming that Christian Watson is out. If Christian Watson is playing, would you still play Watson over Pickens, or would you still take Pickens?
He's at let's see, as PPR. In half PPR, he's going to end up going up a little bit because he's more of a low volume, high touchdown guy. So I've got him penciled in at 32 right now. Pickens at 34. So it all depends on the language that they're using around Watson, and just keep an eye on those reports because they might say, oh, he's going to have a limited snap count and et cetera. Then you might want to just go the other direction because you definitely want players that are on the field. It's a lot easier to score fantasy points when they're on the field.
Right. I think I'd choose Pickens out of all
Regardless.
4 of these guys, just kind of regardless, and don't really play around with the whole Watson injury right now because I feel like they're similar players. So just go with the one that's 100% healthy rather than the one who might be healthy. Peter has a super chat down here, so appreciate the support, Peter. He's asking, would you flex Jordan Addison or Brandon Ayuk if he's already starting T. Higgins and Jalen Waddle? A lot of Jordan Addison questions today. As a fellow Addison,
yeah, I think it's funny that it's not funny. It makes sense. I mean, Addison's like right there on that flex fringe, and we don't know what his role is yet. I'm going I.U.K. in this one. I think he's 10 spots or so ahead of Addison right now in the projections. There's definitely a scenario where Addison outscores him, but Ayuk will be out there 80% of the time. We don't know what Addison will be. And, maybe that game, as you mentioned earlier, that San Francisco-Pittsburgh game might be more competitive than the Minnesota-Tampa game. So, the fact that San Francisco might be throwing late in the game, I think gives Ayuk a little bit more of a nod. He's also Ayuk is really good. Ayuk's issue is, he's a really good route runner, really good player. He had a good year last year. His issue is Deebo Samuel and the fact that they tried to force the ball to Deebo. And, from what I've read, Ayuk's camp was even better. I think Kyle Juszczyk said that he looks like a different player. So I'm really interested to see, do they start to feature Ayuk more in the offense as opposed to trying to force feed Deebo Samuel?
Yeah. I was trying to think in my head. I was like, who's Joey Porter going to cover and, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if that really matters because the Shanahan just moves all these wide receivers around anyway and just tries to give people the ball in space. So that might not necessarily matter as much as it might typically. But I don't think that none of that changes my answer in terms of I'm playing Ayuk over Addison this week. Where are we at? Parker, start 2. Dameon Pierce, James Cook, Zach Charbonnet, Javonte Williams. Would you play either of the bottom 2 running backs or JSN over Drake London in the flex? A lot of different questions. Let's start with the start 2.
Oh boy. Okay, so let's start with the start 2. We don't know what the scoring system is. I'll just go PPR then. I guess we really should do a poll and find out what percentage of our viewers, just so we have a default. I think Pierce is he's 22. He's at 22 against Baltimore. Yeah, that's not the greatest matchup, but he's got a nice floor.
Yeah,
I have him ahead of Cook.
Loaded, I think.
I have him ahead of Cook. I think Cook would be second. Charbonnet, Javonte third. Charbonnet fourth. I don't think Charbonnet is an option yet until we know what his role is.
Agreed.
And then would you play either of the bottom 2 running backs over Drake London in the flex? Assuming PPR.
No, I would play Pierce, James Cook, and Drake London. I don't trust Javonte yet. But that could come back to bite me.
Projections do say Javonte over Drake London in PPR. Sean Payton did say that Javonte was going to play a lot and have a big role. London, I think, is a solid play against Carolina. That's a tough one because, we're looking at the Samaje Perine, Javonte Williams backfield. We just don't know how it's going to split, especially, week one coming off the ACL. I think I probably would just lean Drake London for safety, but, this kind of flies in the face of the running backs tend to be safer in the flex because of the,
the floor,
ease to get in the ball. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think if you're like Pierce, I feel like is already, well, maybe that's an argument for Javonte Williams. If you're trying to go for upside, because I feel like Pierce is more of a floor play. James Cook, I feel like, is also somewhat of a floor play, maybe an upside play if he scores. And Drake London feels like a floor play. So I feel like we got a lot of floor plays. And if you want to inject a little bit of upside, Javonte might be, that player instead because of the touches that he could get and the receiving upside that he also has as well, especially if Judy's out. I mean, Javonte already had a good receiving workload last year, had good receiving workload in the preseason. If Judy's out, he could have 4, 5, 6 receptions this week.
I would say London has pretty good upside as well. I would say similar to Javonte just because of the matchup. Carolina was 32nd last in the league in adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers. And this is like, I know it's got a low total, this Atlanta-Carolina game, but it could be like a sneaky shootout. I don't know. I don't think either defense is terribly good. So
Carolina's offense is not very good either. Unfortunately for Bryce Young, not there yet. Yeah, I'm sticking with my original instinct of Pierce, Cook, and London.
I agree with that.
Okay. Wrong one. Jeremy. That was half PPR, by the way. Parker hit us with the half PPR. Did that change your answer at all?
It might make that might make Javonte a little bit more appealing.
Dang, we just got the answer, and then
yeah, no, we got the answer. I hate to, but I'm like, this is the most accurate podcast. I don't know if it is, but it's the super chat, AMA super chat. I don't have to be accurate. London, Javonte and London. I mean, they're separated by 2 points in the projection, so it's not a whole lot. It's not like a huge confidence to pick Javonte over London, but making it half PPR does make Javonte a little more appealing.
Yeah,
I would just say with Javonte, week one, be cautious. Good player, good, real world wide receiver one like Drake London might be a better play. He's going to play 89% of the snaps. Javonte might only be out there for 10 touches. We don't know.
Sticking with our original answer.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with it.
Jeremy with the $5 super chat. We appreciate you, Jeremy. He's asking, in a 1 wide receiver spot and 2 flex spots left, would you start Kenneth Walker, T. Higgins, DeAndre Swift, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, or James Conner? So we need 1 wide receiver between Higgins, Kirk, and Ayuk, which I think that would be Higgins. And then we need 2 flex spots from the rest of the guys.
And we don't have a scoring system again.
Oh crap, Jeremy, scoring system. Go quick.
Okay.
James Conner is in for me as a flex. I picked Higgins and James Conner already.
Okay. James Conner. God, these Cardinals.
Nah, dude, he's gonna have like 25 touches this week.
He might. If they're trying to win, are they trying to win?
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters if they're trying to win or not.
And this may be a dumb question. Who's K-Will?
Kenneth Walker. That's KW3.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I thought that was an I. I would say, Walker.
I think he's the third one.
Walker, Higgins.
I'm going James Conner. You can.
No, well, Ayuk or Conner. And I think a lot of that depends on the scoring system.
Jeremy, scoring system. Just drop a comment.
38. Ayuk's going to be a lot lower than 38. Yeah, I agree with you then. I'm going to go with my projections whenever I don't know gut. Connor with his 15 carries and 2.1 receptions, 77
Listen,
projected
man, he was a
yards.
top 5 running back over the last half of the season without Kyler Murray. All right, this is what we have in James Conner right now.
We should get his name spelled correctly, though. Come on, Jeremy, clean it up.
John said 25 touches from their own 20-yard line.
Yeah.
T. Higgins in the wide receiver spot, Kenneth Walker and James Conner as the flexes. That's how I would do it. We got another one from Jeff. $5. Jeff, thank you so much. He says that he waited too long and Daniel Jones is his quarterback. Am I streaming quarterback now, or are you comfortable with rolling him out there every single week? And in parentheses, he says he's not comfortable this week.
I wouldn't worry too much about this week. I mean, how did Jones do against Dallas last year?
That's a good question.
He had a bad game week 3, 13.7 fantasy points, 14.5 at Dallas in week 12. So it wasn't great. Not nearly, his ceiling's significantly higher. His average was 18.1. So I guess there's that. Like, the Dallas defense is pretty good. Generally speaking, though, I'm totally fine with Jones in mediocre or good matchups. He was my second late round quarterback target after Geno Smith. So in situation, I don't know how big your bench is, but if you have a spot, I don't mind having 2 spots dedicated to quarterback. Keeping Jones, you don't want to cut him, and then rotate another player through that other spot, or find another good QB2 option and then just play the better matchup if you're uncomfortable with Jones in bad matchups. He's got the rushing floor. And the other thing with the Giants too, I think that they're going to be better throwing the ball with Darren Waller. They got Jalen Hyatt. They got Sterling Shepard back. Wan'Dale Robinson should be back. So there's more receiving options. They kept the guys that were pretty good last year, except for Richie James. They kept Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton. So,
and Saquon.
I think, yeah, they got Saquon as well. So I think the baseline yardage should be higher than what it was last year. I mean, Jones was really playing with a short hand in the passing game and did a lot of his damage with his legs. Like he could still do that with his legs, but I think the passing game will be a little bit more consistent this year.
I was trying to think of which quarterbacks are possibly out on waivers right now that you could stream ahead of him. Do you have like a couple names that are just better options that you like more than Daniel Jones this week? Like, would you take Sam Howell? I'm assuming Sam Howell might be on waivers. Would you just drop somebody else, pick up Sam Howell, play Howell against Arizona?
Jones came in at 11 this week, so I'm not worried about it. Tua is not available. Howell's at 16. I mean, that's if you're worried. Like, what I always tell our subscribers is that, like, just use my rankings as a tiebreaker or as a helpful friend. If you don't like Daniel Jones, this is your fantasy team. If you don't want to start him, you're scared, or you just are worried, and you want to roll Sam Howell out there against Arizona, who's going to be terrible, then go do it. Or Russell Wilson, maybe he might be out there.
Possibly.
Both have better matchups than Daniel Jones does. I just think Daniel Jones on a weekly basis is a better option, and I think he's better than he was last year because of the enhanced receiving options.
Jeff said that if you're not worried, then he's going to sleep like a baby.
That makes me worried because I'm a warrior.
No. All right, his fantasy team now rests upon your word.
Yeah.
Parker became a member. Thank you, Parker. Be more like Parker. I think this is on the DLF side. So we have a bunch of videos that are on top of just being just supporting the channel on top by being a member. We have a bunch of videos on the back end that are member only, dating back all the way to January. Some of them probably aren't relevant right now. They probably have some like rookie talk in there or whatnot before the NFL draft. But at least on the DLF side, we have a ton of backlogged member only videos. And one just dropped yesterday. I just dropped one yesterday on how I view roster construction in Dynasty. So you get that with the membership as well, on top of just being supportive of the channel. So thank you, Parker, for becoming a member and being supportive. Hopefully there's enough info in all those videos back there that we can provide a little bit more value on top of that too. Let's see what we got here. Can we get through some quick ones real quick? We haven't talked about Terry McLaurin. Do you trust him if he's playing this week?
Yes. I won't have him ranked in the top 20, I don't think, like as a must start, but he was full participant yesterday. So once I see that, my trust in the player goes up quite a bit. It means he's very likely going to play unless there's some sort of setback, and that he's getting closer to 100%. I know the Pro Football Doc saw him favoring his toe in practice or whatever, but I guess we'll see more video today perhaps. But I wouldn't put him in as a must start, but he does become like a very good wide receiver 3 flex option. This isn't from a game theory standpoint, this is also, the Commanders could put this one to bed early and not need McLaurin.
That's my biggest fear, is that he's a decoy, not because of injury, but because Arizona is so bad that.
I mean, on one hand, it's a great matchup. On the other hand, do they even need him to be out there, or should they just play him half the game and win the game? So,
and Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson both get 20 carries, and I think
Dotson's a must play. And then I think after that, it sort of depends on your situation, whether or not. So I guess to answer your question, do I trust him? I don't, because of the opponent, and that if they're smart, the Commanders would either just let him rest or not play him a whole lot against a really bad Cardinals team that's not even trying to win.
Yeah, that's the reason why I don't trust him this week. Not so much because of the injury, just the matchup. So if you have a better or comparable option, I'd probably go with somebody else, because I think that they'll have more upside. Before I get to the super chat, just a quick transition. We were just talking about the Commanders. Would you start Brian Robinson or Khalil Herbert this week in a full PPR? I'm starting Brian Robinson because of all the reasons that I just said. I think he's gonna have like 25 carries.
Yeah, I got him for 16 carries, 1.6 receptions. I've got Herbert a little bit higher. So I've got Robinson at 31 in PPR. I've got Khalil Herbert at 27. I definitely could see a scenario where they're feeding, the running backs there in the second half, and they have 35 total carries or something like that. I just think I just like Khalil Herbert a little bit more as a player. I did draft quite a bit of Brian Robinson towards the end of draft season, because he was one of these few 18 touch type backs that you could get in the 8th, 9th round. That was unusual to be able to get somebody like that as your RB4. And This is a good matchup against Arizona. I think Robinson probably for the floor and Herbert maybe for the ceiling.
I think that's a good way to go about it. I think that's a good way to go about it. My pick is Brian Robinson, but Khalil Herbert is also just as good of an option, I think. Samson with a $5 super chat. We appreciate you. So he needs to drop one of these players, Elijah Moore, Jake Ferguson, or Ty Chandler. And just from looking at this, I have the Big Bird GIF in my head where it's one of these is not like the other. And I have a feeling that you feel the same way.
Yeah, I would cut Ty Chandler.
Yeah.
We think he's the handcuff to Alexander Madison. That's not even certain, but we think so. But the other two are starters or de facto starters. So,
yep, I would drop Ty Chandler as well. Sorry for the very quick answer, but we appreciate the $5 super chat. And Ty
I'll just
Chandler.
say I love Ferguson. I have him ranked uncomfortably high this week, and I think he might end up doing what Dalton Schultz did the last 2 years, tight end 4, tight end 10 for that team, because I think he's athletically just as good. I mean, there's some highlights out there of him hurdling people. He did a little like Euro step for a touchdown. He only had 11 targets from Dak Prescott, but he caught all 11 for over 100 yards last year. He caught 3 of 3 targets in the preseason. So I'm just really excited to see if he can emerge as a low end tight end 1 and maybe join this conversation, top 8 type conversation of tight end position. So there's a longer answer there for your $5. Feel better about having Jake Ferguson on your roster.
Boom. There you go. I like Jake Ferguson. If you look at his combine numbers versus Dalton Schultz's, they're like a carbon copy of each other. Like it's like almost identical in terms of size and speed and overall athleticism. So yeah, Jake Ferguson. I will also instill more confidence than what John just did. John B with a $2 super chat. So thank you, John. He's asking, I'm assuming this is Khalil Herbert, Deontay Johnson, or Jahan Dotson at the flex. You just said that Jahan Dotson is a must start. Is he more of a must start than Deontay or Herbert in a full PPR? I think it might be Deontay.
Yeah, Deontay is tough to bench in full PPR. But I do have him a little bit below Jahan. So this is maybe one that I would wait on the McLaurin news. If McLaurin is out, you start Dotson, and then if McLaurin plays, maybe you start Deontay. Matchup is slightly better for Deontay against the 49ers, and that game it will be competitive longer, most likely. And right. Herbert, I don't think. Well, he's got that floor.
I think Deontay has that floor though too.
Yeah, he does too.
He's gonna see 8, 9, 10 targets.
Yeah, and maybe he gets a touchdown to start off 2023.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I'm team Deontay on this one.
There's some upside there. 8 for 90 and a touchdown would be nice.
Yep. Or just 8 for 90, 17 points. Just boom. Done. I'm taking Deontay. I think it's the game will be more competitive. I'm worried about the Commanders' passing options. Yeah, I'll take Deontay. Jeremy did say that this was half PPR, so I want to see. This was from the super chat that we had just earlier. Does this set of questions, these set of players, change anything for you?
No, we went with Kenneth Walker, Higgins, and James Conner. In half PPR, you definitely want to consider the running backs more. It gives them a boost. So I think our answer is the same.
Okay, very cool. Just wanted to make sure we touched on that and gave the best answer that we could. Here for the Memes also dropped a $2 super chat as well. So we appreciate you here for the Memes for all the support thrown our way. In a full PPR, you got to pick one for the flex. Would you go Raheem Mostert, Brian Robinson, or Marvin Mims? I love that he included the juniors as well. Brian Robinson Jr., Marvin Mims.
Those by the way, as a runner or a fantasy analyst for a fantasy site, just dealing with these juniors as far as name matching is a nightmare in Excel and trying to scrape data. It's a disaster. Mostert.
The full PPR makes it a little bit interesting because I think Mostert will have more of a receiving volume and floor than Brian Robinson will. But I mean, we've been talking the last 5-10 minutes about this Commanders game and the game script that could possibly happen where Robinson just might see a crazy amount of volume.
Yeah, I lean Mostert. I don't think Mims is in the conversation right now. Unless Judy sits, then maybe you could talk yourself into it. But I think Mostert for me. But yeah, I mean, you're having me come around here on this Robinson volume floor a little bit.
I'm telling you, man. I'm raising 30 touches. It climbs every single time we talk about him. The number of touches that he's going to have in this game.
I would go with Mostert. You've got him. He's the RB1 in Miami for now. I would go with him in a game that should be competitive the entire time. So that's my pick. But Robinson is a fine pivot if you want to go with Addison's gut.
Well, yeah. Well, I think Mostert is also a good option. Like I'm not dismissing Mostert either because it's PPR. I do think that he'll have more of an upside. If he has, 3 receptions, that's going to be better than Brian Robinson having 5 or 6 carries. That just automatically cancels each other out. So the upside I think is definitely there for Mostert in a full PPR than it is Brian Robinson. Dog.
This is Solo. He says I can stick around as long as we have super chats to answer.
Oh, there you go. Solo likes the money. There we go. Rock out. $2 super chat. Full PPR. 1 running back, 1 flex. Javonte, McLaurin, Kenneth Walker, Brandon Ayuk. So we need 1 running back out of that group, 1 flex. I think it's Kenneth Walker is the running back for me.
Walker and Ayuk right now. I think even if McLaurin plays, you start. Well, Javonte might be an option, but again, I don't know what that backfield's going to look like. I project it to be, 50-50, 55-45, but it could be 40-60, tilted towards Samaje Perine. So I would lean Walker and Ayuk.
I think Walker's solidified into the running back spot, and I would also go with Ayuk over Javonte. Not worried. I'm not putting McLaurin in there. We just touched on our concerns about him in the game script. And see, Jeff lives in DC. He's actually hearing 40 touches for Brian Robinson.
40.
So we're completely undervaluing Brian Robinson right now.
It's going to be 50 by the time this chat's over.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get
Can you imagine?
50 touches for Brian Robinson this week. All right. I'm trying to see if there's anything in here that is relatively of interest before we close out in here. We didn't touch on Godwin. Would you rather have Godwin over London or Dotson?
Depends somewhat on it depends on that McLaurin injury. I've got, where is Dotson? Dotson at 19, and this is PPR. Godwin at 24, London at 22. This is like one of the best matchups that Godwin and Evans are going to have, though, this year. Like, this might be their best game. We don't know. I love both. I love both players. I really love Chris Godwin, but this quarterback situation in Tampa could go sideways quickly. I have Dotson thinking that McLaurin is limited or out. I've got McLaurin at 41 at the moment, but now he's looking like he's probable. So that might have to change. I probably would go. You have to pick 2, just 1.
I'm assuming just 1.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I have Drake London 1/10 of a point ahead of Godwin in PPR. So I probably would go London, but Godwin's more established player. Quarterback situations are pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
The Tampa Vikings game could be a shootout, likely to be a shootout, but can Tampa even keep up?
I don't know. I feel like if anything, Baker will like Godwin more. I feel like Godwin just suits the type of quarterback that Baker is. I would start Chris Godwin out of all 3 of these guys this week, because I do think that they're going to have to keep up. Whether or not they actually do keep up, I don't know, but they're going to probably throw a bunch. And I think Godwin should be pretty good for it. To kind of segue off of that real quick, Mike Evans or James Conner in a full PPR. We're just saying that this could be probably the best game that they have, that the Bucs wide receivers have this whole entire year. Do you trust Mike Evans more than James Conner?
No, I would go Conner due to the touch floor. I've got him. I've got him 20 spots ahead in the flex rankings.
I agree. I would also take James Conner.
And
last question.
I was just going to say he spelled Connor's name correctly, so good job, James.
Nice, James. Conner with an E. John, we have to answer John's question because John's a real one, and he answers questions for us in the chat as well. So John is amazing when we don't get to questions or we don't get to questions as quickly. John's the guy who answers a lot of them. So he's asking to start 2.5 PPR, Miles Sanders, Cam Akers, or James Conner with an E.
Flex rankings are close
Conner's
between Sanders and Akers and Conner. Yeah, you're all over Conner. No, I'd go Sanders and Akers in this question.
John, you're breaking my heart. My whole fantasy season relies on like 3 players, and James Conner is one of them.
weren't you pumping up Akers with the first question?
I was. Actually, that's why. Like, to me, Conner and Akers is the answer. but you like Akers and Sanders.
Sanders for sure. He's my top guy of this 3.
All right. Watch
Atlanta, bell cow roll. Awesome offense. The Panthers.
John, I would trust John. Go with
the
John.
I'm wrong half the time. So
we did get a quick $2 super chat though. Need 2 wide receivers: London, Mike Williams, Elijah Moore, Van Jefferson. So London 1.
Yeah, Mike Williams 2. I think the other 2 are just kind of. Thank you for the $2 super chat, but London and Mike Williams stand out of this group. Moore is a very good player, but I just not sure about his role yet in Cleveland. Van Jefferson could outscore all the other 3 guys, but it's Van Jefferson. He hasn't done a whole lot yet. He is my highest ranked Rams receiver this week, along with Tyler Higbee at tight end, who I like a lot. But I'm definitely going with Williams and London of these 4.
Yeah, I agree. Williams and London as well. So we appreciate all the super chats, all the support, all the love, guys. Thank you so much. If you have any more questions, drop them down in the comments on either the DLF side or the 444 side. I answer the DLF questions, especially if they're more related to Dynasty. If you have a start sit question, I would throw that over on the 444 side, and Sal or maybe even John might even hop on there and give a little bit of an input on the redraft start sit 444 side. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We will be back again next week at 12 o'clock Eastern time on Friday for week 2 start sit waivers, all that good stuff, AMA next Friday. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. We will see you guys next week.